Hi, I'm Kevin McAdams. I've been a broadcaster, producer, a soldier, a retail manager, and a teacher, and now I'm a podcaster. You know, I've wanted to do a podcast for years, but I could never decide what it should be about. Should it be news, sports, politics, my favorite sci-fi? Then it hit me. I know a lot of people who do a lot of interesting things and have a lot of cool stories to tell, and I thought, let's tell those stories. So it doesn't have to be the same thing every week. It can be what I say it is. Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of What I Say It Is. Steve Etheridge, how to get a job at a Christian radio station. I know Steve Etheridge from my days back at Clear Channel Radio in South Austin, going back to about 2008 all the way up to 2011. And he was the afternoon drive host on the station that at the time was 102.3 The River, which was Austin's first attempt at a locally programmed Christian adult contemporary format. Steve was excellent in that. I was one of the traffic reporters, and he and I didn't interact a lot in person, but we would using recorded comments back and forth because all the traffic reports were pre-recorded. Those times when I did encounter him in the hallways, I found him to be a genial individual, very nice, very free with complimentary language, and very supportive of everybody in the building. In other words, he was a hell of a guy to work with. He and I live not too far from each other, and we've talked about for years trying to get something going. Not long ago, he had a job at a station not far from her, a nonprofit outfit. He invited me to come be a part of it, but it didn't really work out. And we both learned a lesson about what happens when you let the inmates run the asylum. So we'll talk about all that in this interview. Hang on. We're going into episode 4 now. Steve Etheridge, how to get a job at a Christian radio station.
Okay.
So, first off, I do two.
Is my volume on my mic okay?
Your volume is fine. You sound amazing, sir.
Okay, great.
You sound amazing. You look amazing.
How about that?
We look like
well, come on now.
we both look like a couple of middle-aged dudes, hanging out in our man cave in t-shirts and just not really caring.
Wearing our reading glasses.
Well, these are my all the time glasses. So these aren't even my current glasses. I broke my current glasses. I had to go back fall back on the last prescription. And so maybe that's why I'm telling you look so great.
Oh, okay. That works.
Now, hey, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time. I started this thing up just to, just to tell stories from the old days. And
right.
maybe somebody out there besides us might be interested in it. I don't know. But if nothing else, we're doing it just for fun. And when I think about the old days, I try not to think too much about the Clear Channel days because there's a lot that happened to me and around me that I don't really want to think about there. But you were one of the highlights.
It makes you cringe a little bit.
It does, doesn't it? Oh my God. But for me, you were one of the highlights.
Well, thank you.
We didn't spend a lot of time working together. I mostly worked in separate rooms, but I always enjoyed that time. Even though I think I was mostly doing your traffic reports, just recording it into the system. But.
Well, same here. But it's interesting you say that because some of my best times on air were actually with my traffic reporters, and maybe a lot of that had to do with the fact that once I got off, I had done years as a morning jock,
right.
where I was teamed up with someone or multiple people, and then. Later in my career, I did afternoons, and when you and I met, I was doing afternoons, and so having that extra someone there to just kind of bounce things off of, even though, especially with you and I, it was just a matter of seconds, but it's still just kind of a fun camaraderie thing.
But it wasn't live. Our reports were pre-recorded, and then. I guess we would bounce back and forth on the recordings. I would hear you answer something I said on the air and vice versa. Something like that. It all blends in a lot for me because, we were doing it for 6 stations. It could be insane some days, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then
how long did you do it over there? I forget.
Oh man. Well, it was with Clear Channel a total of 11 years. No, 8 years. I'm sorry. So, and I spent a lot of that time in promotions, working as a promotion assistant. And then I wasn't on the air with traffic for the longest time. I was just the producer. And when I was finally the guy on the air all the time, that was, I don't know. My last 2 years, I worked from home as the producer. And then the funniest
Okay.
part about that is I don't think 99% of the building knew I was working from home.
Ah,
And then I spent all those years in the mobile unit too, driving around the Taco Bell
yeah.
SUV, reporting
Right.
reporting back to the producer in San Antonio. So it was a crazy time, but
Well, and then the other thing that was just so crazy about it, you were probably there before me, but
mhm.
I got here in '06, and at that time, man, I wanted to say what we had 140, 150 employees in the building, 6 radio stations, and it was kind of culture shock to me because I mean, I came from a medium market. It wasn't small. I came from Colorado Springs, but um, there you kind of did everything.
Mhm.
And I walk into the building, Clear Channel Austin, and there's like 3 production directors. And when they assigned you production, I'd walk in the room, and much to my shock, all I was told was I would be given a script and said, "Read this." And the production guys did everything for me, and that was just so unusual. And I thought, man, in radio, this business model can't last. And it
No,
didn't.
no, and it didn't. No, it did not. We always said that, and I remember you used to hear this from salespeople sometimes, at least the obnoxious assholes among them. It was like, we rule all this. They'll never come for us. And you know
Mhm.
what? About a year ago, I'm driving through Waco. I'm coming back from seeing my parents, I think, up around Corsicana, and I'm tuned into Waco 100. The big country blowtorch up there that Clear Channel has destroyed,
Yeah.
and, or I guess iHeart now. But I hear this
They
ad
got their
for,
fingers on it and they massaged it, Kevin.
and that's one way to put it. So I hear this ad, this promo for the and do-it-yourself ad service. It's like there's a portal where you can go in and you can log in and you can write your own ad. You can record it if you want to, and or you can just write your own ad and you can, I'm assuming wherever their production hub is now, I'm gonna say probably
Hmm.
San Antonio. Uh,
Yeah.
they'll produce it for you, or you can produce it for yourself right there on the website, and you can say where you want it to air and pay for it. I'm like, they
Wow.
finally came for the salespeople.
Hmm.
So if I get
Finally got a target on them.
if I get no other pleasure out of that experience, it's that, yeah, they finally came for the salespeople.
Oh yeah, because all the years that we endured, everything seemed to, at the expense of the talent, at the expense of on air, at the expense of production. Anything to do with the programming side of the radio station, it seemed like that was always the expendable part of the business. And like you say, man, to see them coming after sales, well, that changes the playing field once again.
And I came out of small market radio. I came out of East Texas. Prior to Austin, the biggest market I'd ever worked in was, I want to say Buffalo, but it may have been Honolulu, Hawaii. I think Honolulu, Hawaii might have been a little bit bigger. But oh man, that's an experience I could tell 100 horror stories about. Um,
Hmm.
Spending a year part time on the worst station in town. um, and I'll tell those stories someday. But by the time I got to Austin, I'd never before met anyone, and this included Buffalo, which is a few notches above Austin on the lake. But I have never before met anyone who just came in, did 3 hours, and hit the door, or they'd say four
Yeah,
in the door. Back in the day, I had
right,
never met anyone who did that, and then I met people who did that here. So
yeah,
I'm like, why? What are they
right.
paying you? And how do I get your job?
Yeah, I wondered the same thing because I had never encountered that till I got to Austin. And then, off the top of my head, I can think of about 4 or 5 uh, players that we had there who did exactly that. They did their gig, packed their stuff, went home, and that's the last time you saw them for the rest of the day.
But then you had people who would come in at like 4 a.m. and voice track 20 other stations, and
Hmm.
then go do their own afternoon show. like, Bob Pickett, that's his
Yeah.
thing. And then there were a couple of others like that. But and I don't mean to put down anybody or put that down.
Right.
It was just what it was. And if you've got the talent to be on in 20 markets, good for you. But it it was a crazy time, and that's just the only way
You
I
know,
can
it's
think about
fun.
it.
It's funny too that you mentioned Bob Pickett because I'm originally from Oklahoma. My family's still up there.
Hmm.
I lived in Colorado Springs for 25 years, and so I got a lot of family and friends in that area and go up there from time to time. So I do a lot of road tripping between Austin to Oklahoma City to Colorado Springs. And every time I make that trip, I feel like Bob Pickett's in the car with me because just about every town I go through, Bob is voice tracking on a station all the way from Texas to Colorado.
Right, right.
So I do. I pick him up all over Oklahoma.
Oh my God, yeah. I followed him from Austin to Houston one time, so, through
Yeah.
College Station down to Houston. It was, but what I guess the current paradigm of radio today has boosted a lot of people. Um, a lot of, I guess you could say, talent wise, a lot of cream rose to the top. But although, in my opinion, a lot of turds rose to the top as well. I mean, because
I would agree with that. Yeah.
when your toilet's overflowing, the turds float to the top. But I don't know. It just got to a place where it consolidated itself right out from under me, and I think maybe the same happened to you.
Yeah. I would agree with that. It's, I was pretty lucky early on in my radio career. I guess around 1990 in Colorado Springs. And, and like everybody, I started weekend, part-time, overnight, all that good stuff. Um, I got on with a country station, which was, at the time the top station in Colorado Springs, and worked my way again from a weekend part-timer, production director, and all that good stuff, and eventually made it onto the morning show and highly rated and all that. It was independently owned. The station was owned by a cattle rancher from Kermit, Texas, and so I felt pretty fortunate about that. That we were independently owned, and it was a great time, and look back on it fondly. And it's kind of like anything in life. You don't recognize how good it is till it's over. And it truly was. Those people, I mean, that's been 30 years now, and most of those people I still consider good friends, and we had a great time and all this. So after I left that station, I think I got out of there in '99. Um, I was looking for work in Colorado because new management at the country station had let me go, and I got on with Christian AC, owned by Salem Communications. And Colorado Springs, for people who aren't aware, is also the home of Focus on the Family and a whole lot of religious organizations, things like that. Now, understand, when I got signed on, most of the people at the radio station did not want to see me there because, I had some name recognition in town and all this, and a little bit of a reputation, I guess, as far as, doing crazy stuff and saying things and whatnot. So I wasn't really accepted. And my idea was when I got on at that station, I'm going to make myself an air check tape and get the hell out of here.
I think we've
And
all been there a
the
time or
longer
two.
I was, yeah, the longer I was there, the more I enjoyed it. And I ended up staying there for 6 years, became the program director, and really enjoyed my time there. And then they switched GMs, and I think just about everybody in radio has been through this. He wants to reinvent the wheel, which seemed ludicrous at the time because we were the top rated Christian AC station in America. And, he's telling me he wants to change things. And it just got to a point where I didn't want to do it his way anymore. So, a friend of mine here in Texas, he was the one who called me. He's like, "Hey, Clear Channel's making their first attempt at a Christian AC here in Austin. You want to come help me do it and be the music director and do afternoons?" And I'd never been to Austin before. He flew me and the family down, and I liked the town and everything. But I thought, I don't know that I'm really ready to make a move. And so I threw some ludicrous amount of money out there of what it would take to get me. And he called back, didn't bat an eye, and he said, "Yeah, sure." So, now what do? I got to take it. So that's how I ended up coming to Austin, and that's how I got connected with Clear Channel. Now, my and so again, I was at the River was the station with
I
Clear
recall.
Channel in Austin, and I was there for 4 years until it sold. And I would say actually during my time there, by and large, Clear Channel was okay to me. I mean, they gave us tools and stuff like that. However, we were the only Christian AC they had in the entire organization, and I think they just really didn't understand, how to make it work. And once somebody dangled a big juicy carrot in front of them, they took it, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, I remember when they were starting that, because during the time I'd been there, it had been through two other incarnations. First, it was a really good classic rock, actually. Um, and then
Mhm.
they changed to something called Channel 102.3, which I don't think anybody knew what the hell that was actually supposed to be, except that they played a lot of rock songs that maybe you didn't hear anyone else. I don't remember her name, but
Mhm.
the woman who was the program director for it, and because I remember she used to let me voice track late night weekends or whatever, said that it was supposed to be the last free exit before you had to go somewhere where you paid for your music, or before you had to go for an
Uh-huh.
iPod or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't. None of us understood the logic. At least none of us in the traffic room really understood the logic of the Christian AC thing. Other than,
Mhm.
maybe they were like, okay, we ain't making any money with this. It didn't make any money this way, so I don't know. Maybe we can get the Christians to open their wallets.
Right.
And I don't know. I enjoyed it at first, but I remember Don Miller, who was our the morning traffic guy, and who I worked there in the room with. He could see the playlist, and he showed it to me one time, and I'm like, there's like 5 Stephen Curtis Chapman songs in this hour.
Yeah.
This was before you got there. Once you got there and started taking care of the music, we didn't see that anymore. But we're like, does anybody sing about Jesus except for Stephen Curtis Chapman? I don't know.
Well, it was kind of crazy too, in that in the building itself, I hadn't experienced that because when I was in Colorado Springs, the Christian station I worked for, we had two stations. One was Christian music, one was Christian talk and teaching, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got here, in Austin, you've got KVET and Case, two country stations. You've got was it Kiss that Bobby Bones was on at the time,
Yeah.
and um, and then we had the sports station, and everyone in the building. I just kind of got the vibe that everybody in the building kind of looked at us as like the Christian freak show. And it's like, man, all I'm doing here is trying to do good radio, just like you are. Just
Right.
the music happens to have Jesus sprinkled in it here and there. But, by and large, I'm just trying to do good radio. I'm not going to convert you to something if you don't want to, and all this. So it was just kind of funny. But in hindsight, I've also felt like that was a little bit crippling when the station sold because, again, I hadn't really networked with very many people in the short time that I was here. And, part of it seemed like that, oh, the Christian guy, can't go have a beer with him.
Wrong denomination.
Yeah, right.
But I
Really,
always
our
say,
sacramental wine is the best.
I don't know, my go-to one-liner for Christian music is the best thing about Christian music is that when the song's over, you never have to sit there going, what was that song about?
Yeah, yeah, great point. I remember when I had been let go from the country station in Colorado, and the Christian station was interviewing me. The owner of the station, and he was asking me over lunch. He says, "Well, what do you know about Christian music? What can you tell me about it?" And I just said, It sucks. And what's crazy about that is that's how I got the job, because he's like, exactly. And he said, most of it sounds like it's recorded in a garage. And I said, well, that part I can't fix. But I got into it at like the perfect time, because you mentioned Stephen Curtis Chapman,
Right.
and there's guys like him and Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, and all of a sudden they're turning that format on its head. The production value started to go up, and it started becoming a legitimate medium, so I got into it at a great time.
Yeah, I know. Actually, my wife and I listen to the K-Love Network occasionally. Well, actually, she listens to it all the time. I listen to it when she's in my car, and she doesn't. She doesn't like the stuff that I
Yeah.
like to play. But yeah, and when you want to talk about that, they're basically the Christian Clear Channel. They've taken over half the
Oh,
stations in the
absolutely.
country, and probably
Right.
eliminated more jobs than Clear Channel ever did. But that's neither here nor there. But back to your point that the Christian music has really changed and really improved, and is actually quite pleasant to listen to nowadays. So,
Yeah, and it's not that, for a time there, Christian music too was kind of Old Testament fire and brimstone, blood of the lamb, that kind of stuff. And now, with the music becoming more contemporary, um, I think that's what made it more palatable too for a lot more people, is that, hey, I believe in a higher power. I'm doing my best to be a good person. Um, I'd like something that the kids can listen to in the car that's not, a bunch of TNA jokes.
right.
And once Christian radio kind of embraced that mentality, I think around the country it really started to, become more prominent.
When and I know it's something that was a hard sell back in the day. Like when I was, excuse me, oh, little lunch burp. I don't know if I'm going to
Hey.
edit that out or not. I'm tending to leave these raw, but oh yeah, okay. Well, that I'm going to have to edit out. But
Did you have a meatball sandwich for lunch? I can smell it through my laptop.
uh, worse than that, leftover roasted chicken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I like the dark meat, so it's all nice and greasy, and it goes down, to where it goes down and it burns the esophagus, and it just kind of bubbles
Where
there.
you can feel your arteries harden. Perfect.
Well, and for me that's why the chicken is baked, because because with my various health conditions, that's really something I can't
Yeah.
have happen. But I go back to my, when it talk about what a hard sell Christian music was back in the day. I go back to my days in the early 90s. I was in East Texas in Palestine, which I don't know if you're familiar with that area or not. Just like maybe halfway between Tyler and Lufkin, at
Yeah.
KYYK FM and KNET AM. The KYYK FM was, hot country at the time. We just go through a rebrand under a manager that came in, and yeah, I could tell stories there too, but I'm not going to, because that manager is now actually somebody in the advertising market here. So
Oh.
I'm not telling the old stories. I'll tell those stories off the air. But so, the FM was great, and they just never could figure out what to do to get the AM to actually make some money. Okay, so that's where we only did high school football. We didn't do any of the other sports. So that's where we put that. We would actually simulcast high school football. And then they ran they ran like a local classic country format on it, where they were just playing these old automation tapes, and it'd be fun because they would like run out. They would like run out at
Yeah.
midnight, and then or whenever, and the station would be just silent for 2 hours before anybody caught it. This happened in the middle of the day too sometimes. Then for a while, CNN Headline News made their audio available. So we just ran CNN Headline News on it 24/7. And then finally, the last thing I remember they were doing was this format over the satellite called Super Gospel Country, which was I know you've
Super gospel country.
oh, you're familiar with Southern gospel type music, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's what it was. Just
Okay.
24/7 Southern gospel, which, you know, Southern gospel, read that as white. and,
Mm-hmm.
and the song would be something like, let me see, the only song I can remember went something like, do you treat your DOG like a GO? No, do you treat your GOD like your DOG? You know, I can't replicate it, and I damn sure can't sing.
uh,
But and then and then they never. You would think in a small conservative East Texas town they could sell that. No, nothing. But they were just going to let it keep going because they were just going to let it keep going because they had nothing to do with that short of simulcasting the FM. And I don't remember why they didn't want to do that. And then one day it just disappeared. We got
and I love small market radio because I mean, for some reason or another, so many of these stations, it's like a completely different planet altogether, and it's fantastic. It may be bad radio, but it's fantastic nonetheless to listen to.
well, and I want. It makes me wonder what your typical day in Colorado Springs might have been like. I'll tell you what my typical day in Palestine was. So my first couple of years there, I did the evening shift and I did the request and dedication show, which was fun because it was basically the same 10 middle school kids calling in over and over and over. But then I took over the morning show. And my typical day would be you get there at 5 a.m., open the door for the county extension agent so he could come do his little report on the AM, and then go do my show till 10, go into the production room because my production box would already be full, spend the next 2-3 hours making commercials, go to lunch, come back, spend a couple more hours making commercials. And if it's a Friday in the fall, then you got to go do this high school football game, whether out in the field. I produced in the field, but I also produced in the studio too. And if it's not in the fall, or if it's a Saturday, I mean, you'd be in the station 12 to 16 hours. And if it's a Saturday, you usually have a remote or two during the day, a remote broadcast. And then we had a couple of club gigs over the year. Of course, what passes for a country nightclub in Palestine, Texas was, country, of course. And then they closed the bar at midnight, but we would go there and we would start our broadcast at like 7 p.m. and we're doing 4 breaks an hour right till midnight, and we don't get paid. Well, we did get paid, but we got paid with the endless pitcher of Coors Light or whatever the bottom shelf beer was.
That's all you need. Come on.
And then half the time, if they didn't have some part-time kid, you'd have to get up on Sunday morning and go in and run the church shows.
Mm-hmm. That's you talk about the church shows, and that's how mine started. I took broadcasting courses in college. I was on the college radio station, but my first paid gig was with a Christian talk station in a little town outside of Colorado Springs called Fountain, Colorado, and the station was a daytime only AM. And the call letters were KWYD, which I found out later stood for King's Witness on Your Dial. And my job as a part-timer was Sunday morning. First thing, I would drive into downtown Colorado Springs and pick up this giant reel from a church service. I'd run it back to Fountain, which was probably about 15, 20 miles outside of Colorado Springs. Get it threaded up on the machine, and I would play back the church service over the air. Now, they paid me $20 to go and retrieve the tape. And then, I got hourly pay for babysitting the board at this Christian talk station. And the only time I was allowed to talk was once an hour. And this station, give you an idea of the technology where they were. Most of our programs we played were on cassette tape, which, for a radio station is unheard of because of all the hiss and all the problems that would come with playing a cassette tape. But as I would change cassette tapes, I would get 15 seconds to do a weather forecast. And I remember being such a stupid geek. I'd call my friends, "Hey, I'm going to be on in just a second. You got to tune in." And all I'm doing is saying, "Oh, going to be partly cloudy with a high temperature of 70 today." But yeah, that was my first 6 months in radio. That was my prime gig right there.
But back in the day, back in our day anyway, that's how everybody got in. That's how you got your first foot in the door. Because that's what I did at my hometown station, KAND in Corsicana, and I did it in a couple of other places too. I did it in Waco one time just as a part-time job. But yeah, that's how everybody got in. That was the first time they let you do. And that's how you got familiar with the board and all the technology and everything.
Right.
And I remember how it would
when
be.
you mentioned and you mentioned the classic country station you were with that had the big audio reels. We had one similar when I was with the FM station in Colorado Springs, country station. We were playing modern country on the FM, but we had classic country on our AM. And all it was a room across the hall, had a bunch of big reel-to-reel machines on it. It had 4 of them, and they would just kind of alternate. The machines read a tone, and they would alternate. And that's how it kind of mixed up the songs on the air. And it was funny. I had a buddy who told me that Johnny Paychecks, take this job and shove it. The only way he could sing it was with a squeal in it, because apparently on the reel, that part of the tape was stretched. And so there was a line in there that had a squeal in it. And he said, "That's the only way I can sing it."
God, what does that sound like?
Yeah.
Take this job and eek it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that technology is gone now. I mean, you can run a radio station off an iPhone. Or I actually have an old laptop over here to my right out of the shot that I downloaded some open source automation software and put all my music and all the commercials I've done over the last 20 years and stuff like that on it, and created my own personal radio station. All I'd have to do is plug it into a transmitter. It's just crazy the way things have changed.
Well, and it's just funny. The more I think about it, because now I've been, I've dipped my toe in the water a couple of times getting back in radio, but now I've been out of it for a few years. But looking back, it's funny that when I think of radio, when we used to say it when we were on the air, the worst thing, that can happen is indifference.
Right.
You want people to either love you or not love you, but you don't want indifference. And, even now, and I encourage my friends when they're listening, man, even when you're listening to what you perceive to be bad small town radio, man, it don't get no better than that. I mean, if you listen to somebody on in a big market, and they've got really good bits and they're well produced and it's really slick and all that, that's good too when they're well produced. It's all that, we're here playing your continuous favorites back to back, blah, 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 Okay, great. You said 30, you babbled 30 seconds of crap that nobody cares about or will ever remember, and again, with when we were talking about the Christian Talk station, I remember vividly when I was in Fountain, Colorado, we had this guy come in. And if you remember the movie Coming to America, the original one where Arsenio Hall plays kind of the over-the-top reverend, that's the way this guy was. We gave him his own show. He came in with a record player and he played on vinyl. And he'd be going like, "Oh, we're playing gospel like she likes it," and you'd hear him knocking over records and the needle scratching across. And
those are the best shows, though.
It was awful, but it was fantastic because it was memorable,
Yeah, I mean, I knew a similar guy in Palestine. What was his name? Homer something. But he was an old man, kind of lame. I think, if I remember right, he walked with a cane. and he would bring in his own cassette deck, and he would do Sunday mornings on our AM station. And yeah, he wasn't that over the top, but he was just that same, okay, this is so bad, but this guy is so lovable. I want to listen,
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd even
Yeah.
go in
It's
and
so
hang out
bad,
with
but
him while he did his show.
I can't tune away.
Right.
We, I mentioned, dipping my toe back in the water. So about 2 years ago, I went to, I'm driving through Wimberley,
I was
which
wondering if you were
is,
going to want to talk about the Wimberley experience.
yeah, Wimberley was something. Uh, uh, so Wimberley, I don't know what's about 20, 25 miles outside of Austin. Um, so I'm driving through Wimberley, and it's a little tourist area, a lot of retirement, that kind of thing. Now, I've been through Wimberley several times, but I never noticed they had a radio station. I'm driving around the main drag, and I see this little glass enclosed booth, and it's a radio station there. And I thought, man, that's kind of cool. And so I went back home, thought I'd look them up online, and it's volunteer run for the most part. Um, Shows of just all kinds of formats, everything from talk radio to country to rock, you name it, they play it. I listen to them, and it's bad but entertaining, small town radio. And so I sent an email to the general manager. I thought this might be a way to scratch that itch and volunteer to do a show if they'll let me. So I sent him an email and gave him my background and whatnot. And within minutes, he sends me an email back and then calls me and asks me if I'd be interested in doing more than just a show. So he hires me to be the program director now. And me and the guy who serves as the only two paid employees. Everything else on the air are volunteers. I'd never worked with just volunteers before. That was a whole new ball game. You got to love the heart of a volunteer,
Right.
because and that was a reason all these people were involved. They love the community. Um, they love the idea of doing radio, but at the same time, they don't really have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. So trying to motivate them to, hey, doing it this way is going to get you better results. Nah, they don't want to hear that. And I ran into that wall so many times, and I get it. I mean, I wasn't there to crack the whip. At the end of the day, it's still a small town. I want them to enjoy themselves or whatever. But the whole thing just kind of went south for me. They hired a new GM, and um, it's like he said he wanted to clean up the station, the sound of it, and make it better and a little more focused. But when push came to shove, the inmates ran the asylum, and the volunteers didn't want to change. So, and then of course COVID came. I got COVID, then I got shingles, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to bail and focus on my health, and so that's what I did.
And I remember you inviting me. Well, I think I had seen your Facebook post about it and had messaged you saying, hey, you know what? This sounds like fun. I'm sitting around the house doing next to nothing right now because my business was shut down because of COVID. And was this in 20 or 21? I can't remember. Probably sometime in 20. And so you
Yeah, I think it
invited
was
me
20.
out, and I interviewed with you and is he the owner or the guy that founded the station?
Yeah, he was the GM.
Okay. So,
And he was the GM, and he was also they have a board, and he was the board president.
because it is a nonprofit. So,
Right.
and you guys had thought of me for a morning show producer. And so I came out
Correct.
one morning to sit in, and what was I you know what? I don't want to name any names because I don't know who's going to hear this, but the local woman who was doing the morning show, I
remember this
can never
because
you know,
I gave you a warning that she's probably not going to like you, and I was right.
and well, how can I put this? You talk about people looking death at you. I've never experienced that. And so, I mean, I could
Right.
see in her eyes, she just wanted me to freaking die. Like, why the hell are you here? Leave my studio. I will kill you. Like,
And to this day, I'm amazed you've still forgiven me and moved on, because I apologize for putting
well,
you in that position.
that wasn't you, bro. That wasn't you. And I think I remember the general manager after that show. He sits me down out in that nice seating area where they have their stage outside. And by the way, that studio is the say what you want about the
Isn't
place.
it
That is the
amazing?
coolest radio studio I ever extremely briefly worked in.
It
That
is. It's amazing. And real quick to describe it, the so Wimberley sits right on a creek, um, and close to the Blanco River, but a creek runs behind it. And so the station is right on a creek, and it's this completely glass enclosed booth that sits on the creek and right on the square of Wimberley as you're driving through. The second you walk out the studio door, there's a liquor store door right there. So perfect for a radio guy. But also the cool thing, in all seriousness, we had speakers set up outside, and so whenever we were on the radio station, we turn them on. I mean, and there's like a courtyard area there, and people would be dancing, and there's a little pizza tavern there, and people would come out their pizza and beer, and man, it was just a great environment for a small town radio station.
yeah, it was. It really was. And it was very pleasant to be in that seating area too when the general manager told me, well, Kevin, I don't know if this is going to work out.
Yeah.
I mean, I still want to work with you. I can think of all kinds of projects. And if you'll remember from the interview, I pitched him 3 or 4 things they could do to generate income with that place.
Yeah.
Like the original talk studio was just sitting there empty. I'm like, you know what you've got here? You've got a podcast factory. You could be,
Right.
you could be making money leasing this place out, but I don't know. Nobody there wanted to hear that. But
Yeah.
and at that moment, I'm thinking,
Well,
okay, yeah, I failed the audition. So,
well, excuse me, you didn't fail as much as, again, the inmates were running the asylum, and nobody was willing to step up and say, this is how it's going to be. I was hoping to have that authority, but apparently I didn't. But it was, some of the things I was dealing with at the time that I told you about. So again, Wimberley is a town that has a lot of retirees there. Most of our volunteers were retirees, and it included a lot of people who had been like former presidents and CEOs of companies, former politicians. In fact, we had a guy who was a former politician in Wimberley. Good guy, loved doing a radio show, but I could not break him of the habit. Like I said, we had outdoor speakers. Now, I understand, it's only about 10-mile radius, but I would try to convey to them, we're trying to encourage online listening so people can listen to us anywhere, and that could potentially be our bread and butter, especially as we try to attract advertising. But anyway, this former politician, he'd see a guy walk by the studio, and in the middle of the song, crack open the microphone. Hey, Billy, how you doing? Long time no see.
But I bet his audience ate that up.
I would constantly pull him aside and it's like, you realize that nobody can see Billy and has no idea who you're talking to. And furthermore, if they like the song you're playing, you're totally butchering the song. And after about the 5th time I got on him about this, I got the, well, you're not from around here speech, and Wimberley's entirely different. I'm like, man, I live in Buda. It's not like I've been on Mars or something. I'm 15 miles away. Don't act like this is the most unique spot in the universe, because it ain't.
And to be fair, Wimberley is a really cool place. And if
it is,
if you've never been there, it is well worth a visit. Um, but
Absolutely.
yeah, that experience, and you and I remember you and I having a conversation about that. I think I told you that
Mhm.
because I'd experienced the same thing in East Texas. I went into a job in a town called Henderson that lasted one day just because of resistance I met from jocks who've been there since God was two, you know,
Yeah.
since Marconi issued the first license. And I worked one day at that place, never went back. Fortunately, I hadn't moved yet, but
Right.
and I had told you, you know, okay, yeah, you can bring down the hammer or you can fire these people, but get ready for the entire community to hate you because they'll go out into the community
Correct.
and all their buddies that listen to that show, you know. So,
Oh yeah.
but I want to go back to the original thing with this when we were talking about small market radio and how great bad's, you know, bad, the term is relative, but you know, small town
Sure.
radio is, does it even still exist? I mean, my first station back in Corsicana, KAND, is against all odds is still surviving. They'll be celebrating like their 70th anniversary coming up soon.
Right.
1340 AM. It's the station my parents listened to the Beatles on growing up, but
Yeah.
now it's most of the time just a satellite fed, you know, new country format. Because
Right.
and you know what? Who listens to music on AM anymore? Let's face it. I mean, they have morning talk
Uh,
show, morning news show. They do their little swap shop, which has always been done. And then of course
right.
they have all the high school sports.
Yeah.
But there's nothing else any other time of the day. It,
Well, and it's and it's a valid question, like you asked. Does it exist? I mean, in a few places, yeah, it does exist. Wimberley, I'm happy to say that station is on, and it's doing fine, and it's still got its unique moments, if you want to call it that. Um, and it's fun to listen to. Stuff like that is fun to listen to, and I mean, I love when I'm driving, especially you get out in West Texas, up in the Panhandle, as I'm making my way to Colorado, which I'm doing in about a week. Um, you start finding those stations, man, and if I start hearing things like birthdays, obituaries, swap shops, school lunch menus, things like that, man, I'm in heaven. I just think that stuff is gold, you know.
I worked at this. You mentioned obituaries, and I worked at, and of course they're always sponsored by the local funeral home, of course.
Yes, got to be.
And so I worked at this little town. It was when I was in Buffalo, and for about 3 months I commuted way out in the country to a little town called Warsaw, and did their morning show at this little daytimer there, WCJW, which has actually grown a lot now and is like on 24/7 on like 6 FM translators now. So good for them.
Oh
But
boy.
you did the vital statistics, is what it was called. And it was deaths and births. So you had this little, I don't know how to describe it, like this solemn sounding gong that you were supposed to, it was on a cart because I mean, this place, technology wise, you know, I mean, I'm talking about 1997, 1998. Technology wise, this place is still somewhere in the early 70s, with the exception of the satellite tech. So it's on a cart. So, like, and Buford Johnson, deceased. Today's date, 0600. Visitation to be at, what, yada yada, burial service and burial, and then you hit the button, you went dong, and then you went into the next one, and you wanted your most
Yes.
level and most
We,
solid, you know, most solemn voice, and you go dong, and then you get to the
we are
births, and you had this
we
little happy little ding 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 thing, and you went through that.
Well, that's it. We always talk about radio being theater of the mind. So when you heard the gong, it was kind of like the Grim Reaper has now taken over your radio.
Sponsored by Donnelly's Funeral Home, 415 West Highway 20 on the West Hill. Come see us. Well, you'll be coming to
And,
see us anyway, but.
And the great part of the segment, Kevin, is people listen to it and it's like they wonder if they're going to hear their own name. You know,
Like an old engineer I knew in Palestine used to say, I read the newspaper every morning just to check the obituaries and see if I'm there.
right? Another mishap avoided, hopefully.
So I know you're a legend in the transportation industry now. Industry industry now.
You might have had it right the first time.
But do you? I know you mentioned you work for a truck dealership now, and that you really enjoy that. Do you ever these days get the itch to jump back in? Because that's why I'm doing things like this right now, because you know that it's like the venereal disease that keeps on giving. You just can never completely get it out of your blood.
You know, I've been trying to convince myself for years that it's out of my blood, but I know it's not. Like I said, I've dabbled my toe in the water a few times because when I was on at Clear Channel in Austin, that station got sold in 2010, and that was pretty much the end of my radio career as I knew it. I briefly took a job as a GM at a small market radio station in Colorado. Briefly took a job doing mornings for a station in Colorado Springs. I say a station in Colorado Springs. I was actually doing the morning show from my bedroom here in Austin for the city of Colorado Springs. And I actually had partners back in the studio in Colorado Springs, and we had rehearsed enough that they could account for the delay, because there was about a 4-second delay from, when I would say something to the time it would reach them. So we'd kind of rehearsed ways around that. And I would do, have little, I guess mnemonic devices. I would have my clock on my computer set to mountain time. I had little postcards of Pikes Peak in Colorado just to get my mind set right, and things like that. But that was kind of fun. Did that.
Listen to John Denver every morning before the show.
Yeah, exactly. And then did the little gig in Wimberley. So I've tried several times to get my toe back in the water, and each time after it's done, I say, oh well, I'm done with radio. I'm hanging up my headphones and all that good stuff. But I'm sure the next person who comes around and tells me they think I'm wonderful and all that, I will probably jump right back in.
And for me, I feel like the bridge back into traditional radio is destroyed for me. I really don't feel like there's anything for me to go back there for. But over the last several years, I've built my little thing here. I've built my little company and now do live streaming. And now I'm actually seriously trying to podcast again. So I find that scratches the itch for me. I've tried to go back a couple of times. I've tried to talk to people back in the day. One person even tried to help me get into Austin Radio Network. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I was far from the best version of myself in those days. People talk about their life being a train wreck. My life was the shitstorm that caused the train wreck in those days. So,
well, I didn't realize you were going through a lot, but you held it together very, very well.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's not hard to talk about the same backup on Mopac, that's there every single day. But yeah. On the other hand, when you've got to talk about the chemical spill that's got 290 East or 79 East at Huddle backed up all morning, that's when you get a little bit of a challenge.
But I agree with you though, what you say about the bridge is no longer there. I can't see myself going back and doing traditional radio as we knew it. I've seen so much has changed, and most of what has changed I'm not a fan of. I have to be, in all honesty, I've had several people, once I got out, several people have encouraged me, including you, I think at one time or another, about doing podcasts. And I don't know if it's fear, laziness, maybe a combination of it. But I have been watching you from afar as you've grown your company, and you've done an awesome job, by the way. And
Thanks.
also, when I was trying to get back on my feet, you threw me a bone a couple of times, and I did a little bit of work for you, and I'm grateful for that. And it was kind
Well,
of
at the
fun to
end of this, at the end of
see your
this,
operation.
at the end of this recording, I'm going to pitch. I was going to give you a recruitment speech anyway, but
Oh, okay. Woohoo, job opportunity. but but like I said, you've done really well for yourself, and I've kind of just been watching from afar and seeing, okay, he's successful with this. Maybe that's something I could try. Not to be a direct competitor, but just the idea of doing podcasts, things like that. Because for the longest time, I just convinced myself, well, I don't have that kind of equipment. I don't have the technical knowledge. But as you and I, we've had several discussions over lunch, things like that. The technology has gotten so much more simpler based on all the various programs that are now available on your computer or your phone that you really don't need any extra equipment anymore.
yeah, I mean, you're talking on to me through what I assume is a USB mic in your bedroom, and
Correct.
it sounds loud, clear, distortion free, no weird background stuff, no echo. It I mean, you got everything you need right there to do a radio show. In fact, I
Yeah, it's
think that's what
surprisingly
a
easy.
lot of people are doing right now that are still in it, or just recording, their voice tracks and everything from home and just emailing the whole show in. But
Mhm.
so it's nice that and I said this all the way back to 2003 when we first started KMAX Sports. It's nice that the internet has democratized things, that has made it possible for everybody to do a show, to get their voice out there. But I always
Right.
said, just because everybody can doesn't mean everybody should.
Yeah,
But
that's a
now
great point.
the landscape is so open and so tolerant that anybody can just pitch an idea out there. I've got so many ideas for
It's
podcasts and shows. This is the I've had so many over the last few years that my brain is clogged. This is the first
yeah.
one to finally make it out of there.
Well, and so and I think it's a good idea. It's natural. It's just you chatting it up with friends, and um, and it's opportunity to talk about things of interest, for yourself. And I think anytime, and that's really kind of the whole idea behind podcasting too. I think anything that you genuinely find interesting or brings you some joy or what have you, you're going to be passionate about that, and I think it shows in the conversation.
Well, now the recruitment speech.
Ah,
I don't know. I don't know what your Friday nights are going to be like in the fall, but I am looking to put together crew for high school football. So think about that.
well, I was pretty decent left tackle. I could probably play for your team.
All right. Well, let's talk. Let's do lunch again real soon. Please let me know your schedule. It'll be
Yeah.
on me, and please I'm serious. Let me know when you're free. Let's go do lunch again.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
this
that would be good, man. Like I said, sorry I haven't stayed in touch recently, but we'll definitely do that.
and you talk about you talk about not not knowing how to proceed or whatever. My format right here, you know who Mike Rowe is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he does this podcast that's just amazing, and I'm just completely ripping off his format to do
Yeah.
this, just because. Well, there's nothing wrong with emulating somebody, and I did send
Oh
a
no, not at
donation to his
all.
foundation. So I mean, and where I'm going with that is that nobody should be afraid to start. Nobody should be afraid
Yeah.
to start, and if you got to copy somebody else to get yourself going, there's nothing wrong with that. But you, my
Yeah.
friend, are welcome here anytime.
Well, thank you, sir. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Again, when it comes to podcasting, I guess I was always convinced, well, I got to talk about something. I got to be knowledgeable about it, and blah blah blah, and all this. And then I thought, well, why not just crack the mic and enjoy myself and
Tell
quit worrying
stories.
so much about, yeah.
So just to
So that's probably the way to go.
and just to as Mike Rowe says, to land the plane. To
Right.
Well, I guess we already landed actually. it's just we just left it there.
Yeah.
Well, all right then. So, man, I really appreciate you
thanks,
taking
man.
the time out of your busy weekend. And
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Hopefully we're not going to bore anybody to sleep, but even if we do, so be it.
so be it. Exactly. Thanks, Steve.
No, I truly, I enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
Anytime.
See you, Kevin.